The biting wind of a Chicago Christmas Eve whipped against the glass doors of the Silver Spoon, a stark contrast to the golden, warm luxury inside. Hattie Mae pulled her thick, charcoal wool coat tighter around her frame as she navigated the slippery sidewalk. The coat was old, its fabric pilled from years of faithful service, and her knit hat had seen better decades, but they were warm. That was all that mattered to Hattie on a night when the temperature had plummeted well below freezing. She paused for a moment before the towering oak entrance, her breath hitching in white clouds against the frosty air. Through the pane, she could see the glow of crystal chandeliers and the flicker of candlelight on tables draped in white linen. It looked like a different world, one she knew well, though nobody looking at her tonight would ever guess it. With a steady hand, she pushed against the heavy brass handle. The door groaned open, allowing her to slip into the foyer. The silence of the winter night was instantly replaced by the soft hum of jazz and the murmur of polite conversation. The air smelled of roasted pine nuts, expensive perfume, and sage. Hattie stomped her boots on the plush red carpet, trying to dislodge the clumps of snow clinging to her heels. She wasn't trying to make a mess, she just wanted to be presentable. She straightened her spine, a habit from 40 years in boardrooms, and approached the hostess podium. Clara, the young woman manning the station, didn't look up. She was tapping furiously on her phone, the blue light illuminating a face perfectly made up but etched with boredom. Her manicured nails clicked against the screen, a sharp rhythmic sound that seemed to say, "Do not disturb." Hattie waited. She was patient. She knew that young people often lived in the digital world more than the real one. After a long minute, Hattie cleared her throat softly. "Good evening," she said, her voice raspy from the cold but filled with a grandmotherly warmth. Clara's finger paused. She slowly lifted her head, her eyes traveling up from the screen. They didn't meet Hattie's eyes at first. They stopped at the frayed hem of the wool coat. Then they moved to the worn leather boots. Finally, they landed on Hattie's face, not with a smile of welcome, but with a look of sheer incredulity. The festive warmth of the room seemed to evaporate in the 3 feet of space between them. Clara didn't check the reservation book lying open in front of her. She didn't reach for a menu. She simply leaned back, crossing her arms over her chest as if protecting the establishment from a contaminant. "Can I help you?" Clara asked, though the tone suggested she hoped the answer was no. "Yes, dear," Hattie smiled, ignoring the chill in the girl's voice. "I have a reservation for 7 o'clock. The name is May." Clara didn't move toward the book. She let out a short, sharp sigh, loud enough for the couple waiting near the cloakroom to hear. She looked over Hattie's shoulder at the crowded dining room, then back at Hattie, her expression hardening. "I think you're confused," Clara said, her voice raising slightly, performing for the audience she knew was watching. "We are at capacity tonight. Fully booked. 4 months." "I understand it's a busy night," Hattie replied calmly, her hands folded in front of her. "That is why I called 3 weeks ago. If you would just look in the book." "I don't need to look in the book," Clara interrupted, snapping her gum. She leaned forward, invading Hattie's personal space, her eyes narrowing with a cruelty that felt jarring against the backdrop of holiday cheer. She pointed a long, acrylic nail toward the frosted window. "Clara leans over the podium, voice dripping with disdain. The soup kitchen is 3 blocks down, ma'am. This is a private establishment. The soup kitchen is 3 blocks down." The words hung in the air, sharper than the winter chill outside. Hattie didn't flinch, though the insult landed with the weight of a physical blow. She shifted her weight, her hand instinctively tightening around the strap of her worn leather handbag. Inside that bag was a smartphone that connected her to a network of attorneys and a board of directors who jumped when she whispered. But to the young woman in front of her, she was just an old nuisance clutching a purse. Hattie chose not to use her power yet. She wanted to give them a chance, one final chance to be decent human beings. "Young lady," Hattie said, her voice dropping an octave, steady and resonant. "I am not looking for a soup kitchen. I am looking for the table I reserved 3 weeks ago. My name is Hattie Mae. Check. Book." The command in her voice, subtle but undeniable, made Clara blink. The hostess opened her mouth to retort, but the heavy oak door to the manager's office swung open. A man in a slim-fit navy suit strode into the foyer, checking a gold watch on his wrist. It was Julian, the general manager. He possessed the kind of polished, manufactured handsomeness that looked good on social media, but felt cold in person. He spotted the standoff immediately, his eyes darting from Clara's flushed face to Hattie's oversized coat. "Is there a problem here?" Julian asked, his voice smooth but laced with impatience. He didn't look at Hattie. He looked at Clara, as if the woman standing in front of him was merely a piece of misplaced furniture blocking his view of the snowy street. "She's refusing to leave, Julian," Clara said, her voice pitching up into a defensive whine. "I told her we're at capacity, but she keeps claiming she has a reservation. She's blocking the entrance for real guests." Julian finally turned to Hattie. He didn't offer a greeting. He didn't offer a smile. He let his gaze rake over her, lingering on the wool hat and the sturdy, unglamorous boots that were still damp with melting snow. He let out a short, derisive breath through his nose, a sound of pure dismissal. "Madam," he said, stepping forward with exaggerated, condescending politeness, "my hostess has already informed you of the situation. We are fully booked with our VIP members tonight. Perhaps you misunderstood the nature of this establishment." "I didn't misunderstand anything," Hattie insisted, meeting his gaze with a calmness that seemed to irritate him. "I have a confirmation number. Our system is experiencing glitches." Julian lied effortlessly, not even glancing at the computer screen that was clearly glowing behind Clara. "And regardless of reservations, we maintain a strict atmosphere here. Our guests pay for a certain visual experience." He took a step closer, invading her personal space, using his height to intimidate. "We have a dress code," he continued, gesturing vaguely at her coat as if it were offensive. "And you simply don't fit the aesthetic we sell here. This is a place for success, for people who belong, not forged charity cases looking for a free warm spot." Hattie stood taller, her pride untouched even as her heart ached for his arrogance. "You are making a mistake," she warned quietly. Julian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He pointed to the door. "Leave now or I'll have you removed. Don't make a scene on Christmas Eve." The humiliation was public now. Diners whispered behind menus, eyes darting between the well-dressed manager and the old woman standing alone. The festive jazz music seemed to mock the tension in the room. Hattie stood motionless, her dignity forming a silent shield around her, but her body betrayed her. A dry cough racked her frame, and a shiver ran through her shoulders, a lingering effect of the biting sub-zero wind she had endured outside. To the staff standing nearby, servers polishing glasses, busboys clearing tables, she was a spectacle, a problem to be ignored until it disappeared. Except for one. In the shadows near the kitchen swing doors, a young busboy named Leo watched with wide, conflicted eyes. He looked no older than 20, his uniform slightly too big for his thin frame, his sleeves rolled up to reveal arms tired from a double shift. He saw the tremor in the old woman's hands. He saw the way she leaned slightly against the wall for support. While Clara smirked and Julian turned his back to share a laugh with a wealthy patron at the bar, Leo made a decision. It wasn't a calculated move. It was a reflex of a heart that hadn't yet been hardened by the corporate ladder. Ignoring the unspoken rule to not engage, Leo grabbed a clean glass and filled it with warm water from the service station. He snagged a velvet-cushioned chair from an empty table near the entrance and dragged it over. The scraping sound drew a few looks, but Leo didn't stop until he was right in front of Hattie. "Please, ma'am," Leo whispered, his voice trembling slightly as he placed the chair behind her. "Sit for a moment. You look cold." He offered the glass with both hands, a gesture of respect that had been entirely absent from the interaction so far. Hattie looked at the boy, surprised. For the first time since entering the Silver Spoon, her eyes softened with genuine warmth. The steel in her gaze melted into gratitude. She sank into the chair, the relief washing over her face. "Thank you, son," she said softly, wrapping her cold fingers around the warm glass. "You have a kind spirit." "I'm sorry about everything," Leo murmured, glancing nervously at the manager's back. "Just rest a minute." But the moment of humanity was short-lived. Julian turned around, his laughter dying instantly as he saw the scene. A vagrant sitting on his expensive furniture? His staff serving her? The veins in his neck bulged. He stormed over, snatching the glass from Hattie's hand with such force that water splashed onto her coat and the pristine floor. "What do you think you are doing?" Julian hissed, looming over Leo. "I told you to clear table 4, not serve loiterers. Do you want to lose your job tonight? Because I can make that happen instantly." Leo shrank back, stammering an apology, but Julian wasn't listening. The manager turned back to Hattie, his face red with rage, pulling out his phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police. You're trespassing." Julian's thumb hovered over the call button on his phone, a sneer plastered on his face, anticipating the police arrival. He wanted this over. He wanted the stain on his perfect evening removed, so he could go back to shaking hands with the city's elite. But instead of fear, he saw something unsettling in the old woman's eyes. Hattie didn't beg. She didn't cry. She simply checked her watch, a calm, deliberate movement that mirrored the patience of a predator waiting for a trap to snap shut. "Go ahead, Julian," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the din of the restaurant. "Make the call. But ensure you spell my name correctly for the report." Before Julian could press the screen, the heavy double doors at the entrance swung open violently, pushed by a gust of wind and a pair of urgent hands. A blast of freezing air swept through the foyer again, making the nearby diners shiver. But this time, nobody looked away. 3 men entered. The one in the lead was a towering figure in a charcoal cashmere coat and a tailored suit that cost more than Julian's car. He carried a leather briefcase like a shield. It was Mr. Sterling, one of Chicago's most feared corporate attorneys. Julian froze. He recognized the man immediately from the society pages. This was a VIP. This was the kind of clientele Julian lived to serve. Julian shoved his phone into his pocket and stepped over Leo, smoothing his jacket, a practiced smile instantly replacing his scowl. "Mr. Sterling." Julian beamed, extending a hand, completely ignoring Hattie. "What an honor. We didn't expect you, but I can arrange a private table immediately." Mr. Sterling didn't even blink at him. He walked straight past Julian's outstretched hand as if the manager were invisible. He marched directly to the old woman sitting on the busboy's chair. To the shock of the entire room, the powerful attorney bowed his head slightly in a gesture of profound respect. "Apologies for the delay, Madam President," Sterling said, his voice crisp and professional. "The traffic in the loop was terrible due to the snow, but I have the documents." Julian's smile faltered, twitching into a confused grimace. He laughed nervously, a high-pitched sound. "Mr. Sterling, surely there is a mistake? You know this vagrant." Hattie stood up. The movement wasn't the slow, pained rise of an old woman anymore. It was the commanding ascent of a CEO. She shed the persona of the tired grandmother like an old skin. "Vagrant," Hattie repeated, the word cutting through the silence like a whip. She looked at Julian, her eyes steel-hard. "I believe Mr. Sterling just handed me the deed to this building." Sterling opened the leather folder and handed it to her. The stamped seal of the city of Chicago was visible even from a distance. "Finalized at 4:55 p.m. today," Sterling confirmed loud enough for the onlookers to hear. "Effective immediately. You are the sole owner of the silver spoon and the property it sits on." Hattie took the folder, feeling the weight of the paper, the weight of justice. She turned to Julian, who was now pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The arrogance drained from his face, replaced by a dawning, terrifying realization. Hattie opened the folder, revealing the signatures, and looked him dead in the eye. "I suggest you hang up that phone. You're standing in my restaurant." "Your restaurant?" Julian's phone clattered to the floor, the sound echoing in the silent room. He stared at the legal documents in Hattie's hands as if they were burning coals. The color drained from his face so completely that he looked like a wax figure. The diners, who had previously been whispering about the crazy lady, were now silent in shock, their forks hovering halfway to their mouths. The power dynamic in the room hadn't just shifted, it had capsized. Mr. Sterling stood silently by Hattie's side, a pillar of corporate authority that made Julian's earlier arrogance look like a child's temper tantrum. Julian tried to laugh, a desperate, gargling sound. He looked around the room, seeking an ally, but found only cold stares. "A joke. This is "This is a hidden camera show, right?" he stammered, his hands shaking as he reached out as if to touch Hattie's shoulder. "You got me. Very funny. Good one." Hattie didn't flinch. She simply took a step back, letting his hand grasp at empty air. She turned her back on him, addressing the room and the stunned staff gathered near the bar. "I didn't buy this building to play games," she announced, her voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "I bought it because I dined here 20 years ago and remembered it as a place of joy. But tonight, I see it has become a place of exclusion." She turned her gaze first to Clara. The hostess was trembling behind the podium, clutching her tablet like a lifeline. "You," Hattie said, her tone not angry, but disappointed. "You judged a book by its cover. You blocked a paying customer because her coat was old, assuming poverty was a crime. You are relieved of your duties. But it's Christmas Eve." Clara cried, tears streaming down her face as the reality set in. "Action meet consequence," Hattie replied evenly. "You may leave." Clara burst into sobs, grabbing her purse and running out the side door, unable to bear the weight of the room's judgment. Now, Hattie turned the full force of her attention back to Julian. He was sweating now, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Madam, Ms. Maith, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I was just following protocol. We have strict standards for the comfort of our guests. I was protecting the brand. Your protocol was cruelty." Hattie cut him off, her voice sharp as ice. "You humiliated a guest to make yourself feel powerful. There is no place for that in my business. You're fired. Get out. Now." Julian opened his mouth to argue, but Mr. Sterling signaled to the two security guards standing near the entrance, the same ones Julian had threatened to call earlier. They stepped forward, their faces grim. They knew who signed the paychecks now. Without a word, they gripped Julian by the elbows. As he was marched out into the snowy night, stripping him of his warmth and his status in one fell swoop, the room erupted into spontaneous, thunderous applause. As the doors closed behind the disgraced manager, Hattie turns around to face the remaining staff. Her eyes land directly on Leo, who shrinks back, thinking he's next. The silence that followed Julian's exit wasn't tense anymore. It was heavy with awe and anticipation. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, sealing out the cold and the cruelty that had just walked out with it. Hattie stood alone in the center of the foyer, the undisputed queen of the castle. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across the remaining staff members who were frozen in place, unsure of their fate. Finally, her eyes settled on Leo. The young busboy was pressed against the wall, clutching his tray so hard his knuckles were white. When Hattie walked toward him, he flinched, bracing himself for the words, "You're fired." "You," Hattie said, stopping just a foot away from him. Her voice was unreadable. I'm sorry, ma'am," Leo stammered, his eyes downcast. "I know I broke protocol by bringing the water. I'll pack my things." "Raise your head, son," Hattie commanded gently. Leo looked up, terrifyingly young and vulnerable. Hattie reached out, but instead of pointing to the door, she placed a warm, steady hand on his shoulder. She gestured to the spilled water on the floor, the evidence of his kindness. "Tonight, dozens of people walked past me. They saw a coat. They saw boots. They saw a nuisance." She spoke loud enough for the diners to hear. "You were the only one who saw a human being." Leo blinked, tears pricking the corners of his eyes as the fear began to melt into confusion. "I don't need a manager who knows how to spot designer labels," Hattie continued, a smile finally breaking through her stern expression. "I need a manager who knows how to spot a heart. As of this moment, Julian's position is vacant. It's yours if you want it, along with a scholarship to finish your degree." For a second, the only sound was the crackling of the fireplace. Then, Leo let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. "Me," he whispered. "Manager. You have the instinct for hospitality that cannot be taught," Hattie nodded. "The rest we can train." The dining room erupted into applause for the second time that night, but this time it wasn't for vengeance. It was for validation. Diners stood up, clapping for the young busboy who had risked his job for a stranger. Hattie unbuttoned her old, pilled wool coat and slid it off her shoulders. Underneath, she wore a simple but elegant emerald dress that caught the light of the chandelier. She wasn't just a CEO. She was a grandmother, a leader, and a woman who had won. She handed her coat to Mr. Sterling and turned to the stunned, beaming young man. "Now, Mr. Manager," she said, her eyes twinkling with holiday spirit. "I believe I have a reservation. I'll take the Christmas special." As Leo hurried to pull out the chair at the best table by the window, his face glowing with a pride that would change his life forever, Hattie looked out at the falling snow. The storm was still raging outside, but inside, the room had never felt warmer. As the warm lights of the silver spoon glow against the winter night, we are reminded that true worth is never found in the clothes we wear, but in the kindness we offer to others. Hattie and Leo showed us that a single quiet act of compassion, like a glass of water offered in the cold, has more power to change a life than any title or position ever could. This season, may we all look past the surface to find the hidden treasure in everyone we meet, choosing to build bridges of respect in a world that can often feel too cold.